Okay, I am excited to introduce our first presenter this morning, Miss Mia Balko. She's with our Texas Farm Bureau, and she is going to provide you guys with some insight on tips and tricks to help you prepare for college as well as just job opportunities out there. So Mia, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be able to join you virtually from Waco, Texas this morning. Like Ms. Barrett said, I am an employee of Texas Farm Bureau. I was an ag teacher for 19 years before I joined Texas Farm Bureau, and I've been with them for about 3.5 years. And my main job description at Texas Farm Bureau is to be in charge of all youth programs. I did notice some familiar names on the list for being part of our virtual leadership conference, which is very exciting. And hopefully some of you will apply for our scholarships in the future, and I'll see your names come across my desk again. That's just a little bit about me. This morning, like Ms. Barrett said, we're going to talk about some interview skills. And some of you have probably seen the email that I sent you to start getting ready for writing a resume. It's never too early to have a resume. They're good to use for scholarship applications. They are good to use for anything that people want to know a little bit more about you. If you ask somebody to write you a recommendation letter, it's always a good idea to give them a resume so that they can personalize that letter for you and really give you a good recommendation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Get started here. So this is called Interview Skills 101. And again, my name is Mia Balko with Texas Farm Bureau. And at the end of this presentation, I will be giving you all of my contact information. And I provide that because I genuinely want to help you guys get through some really good interviews and to write a really good resume. Even if you're just starting high school, like I said, it's never too early to start thinking about those resumes. Let's see if this is going to work. Here we go. So interview skills 101, how to dress for success. Let's start there. General dress code, girls. Minimal jewelry is always the best. You'll notice I don't even have any jewelry on this morning for the sake of trying to keep it simple with you this morning on Zoom. Girls, you also need to fix your hair so that it isn't a distraction. Pull it back, or fix it in a very nice way where you're not going to be wanting to play with your hair and have to push it out of your face all the time. Girls also only wear heels if you're comfortable in them. Some of you will try to wear heels to look professional, but then you can't walk very well in them, and so that doesn't do you any good. So only wear heels if you know that you can walk professionally and comfortably in them. If you choose to wear a skirt, make sure that it is to your knees or lower so that when you sit down, your dress doesn't ride up. If you are going to have your nails done, make sure that you wear a nude or a light color polish. You'll see this color that I have on right now is probably not one of the best colors. I would not wear this if I was going to a job interview. People notice things like that. And then also wear limited perfume when you go on any type of interview, whether it's a job interview, a scholarship interview. You never know if the people that are around you are going to have sensitivity issues to what you're wearing. Guys, no white socks ever, unless you're wearing boots and we can't see your socks. But always make sure that you wear a dark color sock. Make sure that your hair is combed neatly. And then along the lines of the girls, wear limited cologne because again, you never know if somebody in the room is going to have some type of sensitivity to what you have on. A lot of times when you go for an interview, they will suggest either business casual or business professional. It's always a good idea, if they don't spell it out in their information, ask. You can always ask what is appropriate to wear, and they should be able to tell you that. If it's business casual, ladies, a conservative top, a conservative blouse, a solid color cardigan or sweater can be worn, and closed-toed shoes. Whenever you go for an interview, ladies, you never want to wear open-toed shoes or sandals. What not to wear, this should be obvious: no ripped clothing, no jeans, no shorts, no flip-flops, no sandals, no sneakers. And that is for business casual. Then if they ask you for business professional, this is a step up. Darker colors are always more presentable. Limit your prints. You'll notice that I'm wearing something that has a little bit of a print, and it's looking a little, on my end, it looks a little skewed. I probably should have worn a solid color shirt. Again, closed-toed shoes, a nice blouse. A blazer is optional for business professional, but it always looks nice. Again, what not to wear: open-toed shoes. Khaki pants are not considered business professional. Short sleeve jackets are not considered business professional, and you should just never wear low-cut clothing, even if it's business casual. Be very modest in your dress, and always dress up for the occasion. Males, if it's business casual, khakis are okay. A long sleeve button-down shirt is nice. A tie is optional for business casual. If you do choose to wear a tie, make sure that it is a very solid color, that it doesn't have a lot of graphic print on it, that it's very plain. But a tie is optional with business casual. And black or brown leather shoes are always expected when you're in business casual. For you guys, what not to wear: no jeans, no shorts. Short sleeve shirts and athletic attire are typically frowned upon. Again, go back to that long sleeve button down shirt. And no baggy or loose clothing. When we move over to business professional for you guys, a solid color suit, a long sleeve button down shirt, again, a conservative tie with limited graphics and colors. Goes back to the socks, dark colored socks, and black or brown dress shoes. What not to wear in business professional: again, no jeans, no shorts, no short sleeve shirts, no khaki pants, no flip-flops, sandals, or sneakers. And I know some of you think that this sounds very common sense stuff, but you'd be surprised what some people will show up in wearing to an interview. Again, it's always appropriate for you, if they do not spell it out, it's always appropriate for you to ask what the dress code is for an interview. In today's day and time with this COVID-19 situation, we're seeing an uprise of phone interviews and virtual interviews. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some phone etiquette when you do phone interviews, in case you have to do that. You know, when I got hired at Texas Farm Bureau, my very first interview with them was over the phone and was a screening process. And so that is what led me to be able to move down the road for a face-to-face interview. If they call you on the phone, it's always best to introduce yourself when you answer the phone, to make sure that they know exactly who they're talking to. Give very concise answers. That means short answers. Don't talk too much when you're on a phone interview. Phone interviews are meant to be kind of short and sweet and to the point. So very concise answers. When it is starting to dwindle down and you notice that it's coming towards the end of your phone interview, always make provisions for a follow-up. That means always, always make sure that you ask them, what are the next steps in this interview process? Where can I reach you at? How long do I need to wait before I'll have a face-to-face interview? Things like that. Also, make sure that you have good cell phone service. If you have to stand outside, you know, or make sure you go somewhere where you have good cell service. It's always important to make sure that you're not cutting in and out of that interview so that they can hear all of your answers and you can hear all of their questions. Also, make sure that you have limited background noise. If you've got to shut yourself in a room, make sure you tell everybody in your house that you are doing a phone interview so that nobody bothers you. Don't have your pets in the room. I know that this again sounds like common sense, but you would be surprised some of the things you hear in the background when you're doing a phone interview. So phone interviews are very usually a little bit more, I don't want to say casual, but they're a little bit more laid back because you are talking on the phone. Practice your phone interview skills with other people. In today's society, we don't talk on the phone near as much as we used to. We text, we instant message, we direct message, we do all of these things, and phone calls have kind of gone by the wayside. But again, in today's day and time, because we can't meet face-to-face for a lot of things, the phone is becoming much more important in our everyday lives. Also, and one thing I didn't put on here is smile when you're talking, because it comes through in your voice on the other end of the line. And so when you're smiling, they can hear that in your voice, and it always helps a little bit. If you're scrambling to try to write all of this down, don't worry, I'm going to be sending you a PDF of this once we're done with our session today. So you will get this presentation via email. Virtual interviews. We're meeting virtually today, and this is something that, again, has become very, very popular within the last few weeks. The last few months because of the COVID-19 situation. I was telling Mrs. Barrett before we all joined the Zoom meeting that for Texas FFA, they selected their national officer candidate this past weekend via Zoom interviews. And so we sat for 14 hours on Saturday and watched them do Zoom interviews. And so there were things that they really had to pay attention to because we were doing Zoom and not face-to-face. Make sure you have good lighting. My lighting's a little off today. I can notice that this side of my face is a little bit darker than this side of my face. And so that's something, if I was doing a job interview, I would probably try to fix that for my job interview. Try to have a solid wall or limited items in the background. You'll notice that behind me, the only thing you'll see is a door. I would really prefer to have a solid wall behind me, but my house, the way it's set up, I don't have that option. And so I've got this door behind me because that's the minimal that I can have behind me that's not so distracting. I know that when you're on Zoom and on different things like that, it's fun to be able to change your background if you've experimented with that at all. But when you are doing an interview, please don't change your background. And the reason I say that is because when you move your hands or your head, a lot of times you disappear into that background, and it's just not very professional. When we did the Zoom interviews this last weekend with the National FFA officers, one of our committee members put a sheet behind him so that you couldn't see anything behind his head. And that was a good solid background. So you may need to do things like that. Again, make sure that you have good internet service. If you have to go somewhere, say to your church, to your school, or to the county extension office or somewhere, that you can make sure that you have good service so that you're not cutting in and out of the interview. Again, limited background noise, no pets, no siblings, no parents, no roommates. Nobody should be in the room with you because that becomes a distraction. I did a Zoom conference with some students at Tarleton, and there was a girl who had her dog, and her dog was hanging all over her during my presentation. And as a presenter, it was so distracting for me to be able to see her dog. And so just make sure that whatever you do, you are in a room alone, where it's quiet, where you won't have any distractions. You know, if you turn around and look at somebody, that's telling me as a person that's interviewing you that you've got other things on your mind besides besides the interview that's taking place. Now for the fun part, the personal interviews, the face-to-face, what we're all craving right now. We all want to be face-to-face with each other. Unfortunately, we just can't. And so hopefully in the next few months, we'll be able to get back to some personal interviews and some face-to-face interviews. And here are some things that will help you whenever you get to go face-to-face. A firm handshake. You can never go wrong with a good firm handshake when you meet somebody for the very first time. That's going to be one of their very first impressions of you, that and the way you're dressed. When you walk into the room, ask to be seated or where you should sit. It may be very obvious where you are supposed to sit. They may have a chair sitting out there for you, but still go ahead and ask, do you mind if I sit here, or where would you like for me to sit, and things like that. That just shows politeness and courtesy for the people that are interviewing you. When they ask you questions, give them relevant examples. That means give them examples that are meaningful to the job or to the scholarship that you are applying for. You always want to talk to them about things that you've done that make you qualified for the job, for the scholarship, or for whatever it is that you're interviewing for. Again, concise answers. You don't want to talk too much. If you do, sometimes the interviewer gets lost and just quits listening to you. So again, very short and concise answers. Be to the point and make sure that you are answering their question to its fullest. If you provided a resume for them, it's okay to refer back to that resume, and you can tell them, well, like I said on my resume, you know, such and such, I did this job, or I had that job, or I did this volunteer experience. You can always refer back to that resume if needed. Be very tactful. That means to make sure that you know who your audience is, and what you're talking about. I'll use an example. We have a $20,000 scholarship with Texas Farm Bureau, and we were doing our interviews via Zoom a few weeks ago, and one of the committee members asked one of the young people that was interviewing for this scholarship, what's the worst thing that has happened to you during this COVID situation? And the answer that was given was, well, I just turned 21 when all of this happened and they shut all the bars down. Probably not something that young person should have talked about in an interview for a $20,000 scholarship. You know, you can think of a lot better things to answer with than bars getting shut down on you. And so be tactful, know your audience, and know what you should be talking about in that interview. And don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of times, once an interviewer or a panel of interviewers are done asking you questions, they ask, do you have any questions for us? It's always good to have a list of questions prepared. Have them written down so that you don't forget what you want to ask. You can go on Google and you can Google interview questions, and a ton of things will come up to give you some ideas of what kind of questions you should ask. One of those questions that you could ask is, what are the next steps in this process? If it's for a job interview. Even if it's for a scholarship interview, it might be nice for you to know, when are they going to announce the winners? You know, how will I be How will I be notified if I get this job? Or how will I be notified if I win this scholarship? Those are all types of questions that you can ask. So now you've done all your interviews. You've done your phone interview, or you've done your Zoom interview, or you've done hopefully your face-to-face interview. Now what? The next thing to do is to go ahead and follow up with them. If it's going to be a very short turnaround time and you have their email addresses, you can send a follow-up email thanking them for their time. It doesn't have to be anything long or elaborate. It can just be a very short email saying, thank you so much for your time. You know, repeating some of the things that you talked about in the interview and why you think that makes you a good candidate for that job. If it's going to be a long interview process, a handwritten note is always nice. You know, when we did that scholarship interview for the $20,000 scholarship, the young people that interviewed for that knew it was going to be about 3 or 4 weeks before we got an answer to them, because we had to wait for our board meeting to happen for them to get approved. And one of the young ladies sent every one of us a nice handwritten note. And everybody likes getting mail. It's always nice that it's not a bill or something that we have to pay. And so if it's going to be a long interview process, just sitting down and writing them a handwritten thank you note goes a long ways. It helps them to remember you, and it also helps them to know that you are good at following up on things that you've started. It's always a good idea, again, if you email them or handwrite them a note, to repeat things from the interview to personalize the letter. And the biggest thing here is to be patient, especially in today's day and time. Nothing is moving fast because of COVID-19. We're still, you know, I'm still working from home. I haven't even been allowed to go back to the office yet. So a lot of things, especially hiring processes right now, are going really, really slow because of the COVID-19 situation. So just be patient with your interview committee, and know that they are working as hard as they can to try and, you know, to try and get these things finalized. Another thing that's very important for those of you that are applying for jobs or are trying to become officers at higher levels, whether it be 4-H, whether it be FFA, whether it be you know, any organization, FCCLA, any organization that you're involved in, it's always important to know to be very careful with your social media. Some of you may have heard that for the first time in history, a national FFA officer has been let go from his position. He has been removed from national FFA office because of some things he posted on his social media when he was 14 years old, and he's now 21. But some people saw some things that he posted, and it went viral. And because of some of the things that he posted, he has now been removed from office. So if you think that people aren't watching what you do, you're wrong. And people will find ways to see things on your social media. It was a good thing for all of us to see, because it gives all of us the opportunity to go back and check our social media to see what we've posted and things like that. Be careful what you like. Be careful what you share, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whatever type of social media that you choose to use as your platform. Be very careful of the things that you like and that you share. People can go back and find those and can see those. And again, in today's day and time, you know, some people get very offended by these things, and don't think that we are not going to find them. You know, once it's been on the internet, it doesn't go away. And there are ways for people to find things. Don't post anything that you may regret in the future. I know some of you are very young, and you post things that you have no thoughts of your future, and what things that you want to do in your future, but I can guarantee you that people will find it. Employers and scholarship donors do stalk you on social media, I promise. They are looking for those things that make you not worthy of their job or their scholarship. So make sure that you know that these people are out there looking on your social media and looking for things that that could, make you not a viable candidate for them. Have privacy settings. I've got my privacy settings to where if people tag me in things, I have to approve it. There's ways to have those privacy settings on your social media. Again, I know some of you are young and maybe don't even have social media at this time, and that's okay. You're probably better for that because there's less that people can find out about you on the internet. But all of these things are important. Here's my contact information. Again, I will be sharing this entire presentation with you via email once we're done for today. But now I'm going to open it up. We've got about 15, 20 minutes or so, and I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any questions or wants me to elaborate more. I know I just kind of shot a bunch of information at you very quickly. But in an effort to stay on time, I wanted to do that. So if anybody has any questions, I'll answer those right now.
And each of you should have the ability to turn off your mic. So if you prefer to ask the question in person, do so. Otherwise, you can type in the chat and we'll address it that way. But you can, like I said, unmute yourself if you have any questions, and it's easier to ask it that way.
Okay, here's a good one. What posts are red flags for employers? I think that some of the red flags that employers see are anything that's racially charged, anything that has bad words. Sometimes you follow and you retweet and you reshare information, not thinking about what you're reposting or what you're resharing. But I would say that, just making sure that you're very, very careful of things that you post, because like I said, anything racially charged is going to be a red flag. I would say anything about drinking, tobacco, anything about tobacco, alcohol, anything like that is going to be considered a red flag, especially at your age. Because obviously you are, you're not of age to be drinking and having and using tobacco. So being very careful of things like that. I think that also things that can be considered red flags, be careful of your surroundings when you're posting pictures of you and your friends. A lot of things can be misconstrued. A bottle of Topo Chico, for example, can look like a beer bottle. And I know that sounds crazy, but those are kinds of things that you have to be careful of. And so I think that those are some of the things that you just need to watch for. Next question. I saw one that said, are business casual and business professional the only two types of dress? Those are the two main types of what we would of the dress that we would consider for interviews. Obviously, you've got casual dress, which would be shorts and flip-flops and t-shirts or athletic attire. But you would never wear any of that for any type of interview. So I would say that business casual and business professional are probably the two most popular. At your age, business casual is probably going to be something that you're going to wear much more than business professional.
Mia, I saw another question about on there. What would be a good follow-up question for interviews that deal with obtaining a leadership position?
So some good interview questions for that, or follow-up questions for that, could be, if they don't discuss it, you know, what would be some of your, you could ask them about what are some of the functions that you would have to attend, or what type of leadership skills are they wanting you to project to the folks that you're going to be presenting to. Those would be some good follow-up questions for that.
Another one I see here, Mia, is what are your pet peeves in an interview?
Oh, I have lots of pet peeves. So not making eye contact is one of my biggest pet peeves. And I should have put this in my presentation, but the best way to have eye contact when you are doing a Zoom or a Skype or any type of virtual interview is to make sure that you're always looking at the little green dot on your computer. You know, like, you don't want to look at yourself in the camera. So, I mean, on the screen. So always make sure that you're focused on the camera itself. That's the best way to appear to be making eye contact with the interviewers. Another pet peeve of mine is talking too much, because you tend to start saying the same things over and over and over. And that's when, as an interviewer, I tend to start to kind of zone out. Be careful. You know, it's easy right now for me to keep my hands still, but I talk with my hands a lot. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves of myself, is that I use my hands too much. So be careful of your hand gestures, because they can get a little bit distracting as well. And then just being professional. You know, we have a lot of times, again, it goes back to some of the tips that I gave you about being tactful and knowing your audience and knowing who you're talking to. You know, you're even if you know the people that you're interviewing with, you're not their friend at that point. They are a potential employer or a potential scholarship donor, and it is most important to be professional in those situations. I'm seeing a lot of you come up with questions about posting from a religious perspective. You know, they always tell you that in a conversation you should try to stay away from politics and religion as much as possible. I think that religious-wise, you know, that's a tough one, and it's depending on your convictions and your beliefs. And I think that you can go overboard on posting the religious posts, but I also don't want to tell you not to post them. I don't think that an employer or a potential scholarship donor will knock you for being religious. And if they do, that may not be an employer or a scholarship that you necessarily want to receive. I'll tell you that when I interviewed for Texas Farm Bureau, one of the things that they said to me in my final interview was that God has a plan for everybody, and that we're just going through the motions. You know, God has already made all of these decisions for us, and it's just a matter of us going through the motions to fulfill his wishes. And that made me feel very comfortable, because I knew that I was going to work for a company that was going to allow me, you know, to be religious if I so chose. They start their meetings with prayers. They a lot of times end their meetings with prayers, you know, and that's something that is not for everybody, and I understand that. But, you know, I think you just have to be careful on the types of religious things that you post, to make sure that they are appropriate and that they are, you know, clean. And I'm trying to think of the right word to say. Just be careful of what you post. But I'm going to go back and stand by by my beliefs that if you've got an employer or a scholarship donor or somebody like that wants to knock you for being religious, that may not be somebody that you want to be associated with.
Thanks, Mia. That's a good information. Also, another question in an interview is, if an interview is lunch or dinner, what are some tips to maintain professional image during those type of interviews?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. One of my Farm Bureau interviews was a lunch, and that was kind of nerve-wracking because I was scared to eat in front of them. You know, hopefully they've gotten food that is not messy, you know, not something like spaghetti, because, you know, you can always make a mess with that. I think knowing proper etiquette for your meal, knowing which utensils to use, always putting your napkin in your lap, things like that, never talking with your mouth full. You know, those sometimes interviews with food are a little bit awkward because of that. But I think just using your best judgment on knowing when to take a bite of food and when not to, making sure that you ask for them to pass things to you so that you're not reaching across the table. You know, another good etiquette tip is if somebody asks you for the salt, you always give them the salt and the pepper. You never just give them the salt by itself. So I think that that's important. You know, and just brushing up on your table etiquette would be something that would be good for you to do before you have to go on an interview like that. I'm seeing some things on politics. Should we be careful of political stuff that we post? And I will tell you, yes. That is some of the things that got that young man from New Mexico in trouble, were some political posts that he had. They were derogatory to the Democratic Party. And so that was some things that got him in trouble. So I would be very careful on your political posts. I would make sure that if you are going to post something political, that you have done your homework to make sure that, you know, that you are posting something that is factual. There's a lot of fake news out there. So I would always make sure that whatever you are going to post is factual information. They cannot discriminate against you because you're a Republican or a Democrat, you know, but they can think that things that you've posted are inappropriate. So I would just be careful again on what you post, to make sure that everything you're posting is factual information. I've seen this question come up a couple of times from Zachary. If a job interview is related to farming, would a pair of starched jeans and a long sleeve button down shirt with a pair of dress boots be appropriate? I think that goes back, Zachary, to whether or not, where you're doing the interview. If you are going to do the interview out in a field, I would say yes, that would be very appropriate. If you are going to be in an office type setting, I would leave the jeans at home and I would wear a nice pair of khakis with my dress boots. But I think that, you know, a lot of it depends on the setting of the interview and where you're going to be. Again, if you're going to be outside, you know, jeans are appropriate. So I would think that's how you would dress for that occasion.
Any other questions that we've missed in the chat? If someone wants to raise your hand, we can turn on your mic and let you ask that question. And we've tried to scroll through the chat, but again, we may have missed something.
Haley, that's a good question on whether you should insist on paying for the lunch or dinner, or if you should let them pay. Most of the time, whoever has done the inviting is going to be the one that pays. And so a lot of times, you know, when the check comes, you can offer to pay for your part. But most of the time they are going to tell you that they're going to pick up the check. So that's a good question. You know, like I said, you can offer, but 9 times out of 10, if they've invited you to this lunch or this dinner, they are going to pay for you. Yes, Natalie, it is completely okay to talk about sports and extracurricular activities. You know, it's important, especially for employers, to know that you are involved in other activities because they may end up having to work around your schedule for those things. So it is perfectly okay to talk about that. You know, in those sports and extracurricular activities, you may have leadership roles in those, and it's good to talk about that because that shows that you are a leader in and out of the classroom, and they may be looking for those leadership skills. So yes, it is perfectly okay for you to talk about those things. Any other questions we missed? Well, if there's no other questions, I have thoroughly enjoyed being with you guys. Oh, here's another question. When would be a good age to start a resume? You know, it's never too early to start a resume. I would say that the best time to start a resume would be your freshman year, and to keep a running tab from your freshman year all the way to your senior year on what you've done. And the reason I say that is because when you start applying for scholarships your senior year, you're going to forget some of the things that you did when you were a freshman. And so it would always be a good idea to have a resume to be able to refer back to, especially when you're doing those scholarship applications. Is there a line drawn where it turns into bragging? Yes, it is. I think that if you lay out the facts, you know, of the things that you've been involved in, you know, that's not bragging, but you can get to the point where you start talking too much about yourself. I would try, and when you're talking about your sports and your extracurricular activities and some of your achievements, I would try to keep them specific to the job or the scholarship that you are applying for. And that way it doesn't turn into bragging, it turns into factual information that would make you a viable candidate for that job or for that scholarship. So I think that you have to be careful to not talk about things that don't have anything to do with that job or that scholarship. Yes, that's a good question.
Yeah, I scrolled back up and saw a question about social media that you might address a little bit. They're asking if they do not have their name nor ever show their face, could an employer still find them?
You know, where there's a will, there's a way. I think that they can find anything they want to find. You know, your chances of them finding you are probably less because you don't have your name or your face. But you know, there's ways to search with email addresses and things of that nature and phone numbers. So just be careful still of the things that you post. I see this one. Is there a way to list disabilities in the resume, or will I have to let them know when I get there? I don't think that you should list your disabilities on your resume. I think that that is just something that you should talk about them if you get an interview or when you get an interview in person, and talk about those things then, especially if it's something that would limit you from doing some of the job responsibilities that they would have you doing.
For those of you that may have not seen in the chat, we are taking kind of a roll call just so we know exactly who participated in this session. Those names will be entered into a drawing for some door prizes. So I'm going to post that here again. If you can make sure you do that before you leave, that way we have an accurate record of who participated. So if you don't see that, like I said, just click on the chat at the bottom and it should bring up the window. It's a quick, basically name and email and kind of where you're from. It won't take you 2 seconds. We will send an overall survey as well later today, just so we get an idea of how all the sessions went. We'll share that with our presenters. So if there's things that Ms. Balko might use to change anything that you recommend to her, she'll have that information. Otherwise, it's more for us just to kind of see how our presentations went, especially in this new virtual setting. So we greatly appreciate everyone participating in this. And Ms. Balko, do you have any kind of closing remarks for the group?
I just want to say thank you all for joining us this morning, and I've enjoyed it. I wish we were face to face. It would have been so much better and more engaging. But again, in this day and time, we're learning to adapt to our surroundings. And so anyway, I'm going to be sharing this PDF with you later this afternoon, and it has my contact information. And again, I would not provide you with my contact information if I did not genuinely want to help you. So please don't feel like you can't reach out to me. I answer emails pretty quickly. And would love to help you out with anything that you need. I did send you, a couple of days ago, I did send you a sample resume that could help you get started on doing a resume. It's very simple, and it's a very simple format for you to follow. But it'll help you to start putting your thoughts on paper. If there's anything I can do to help you with resumes, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you out. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy it. It's what I do in my free time, is help people with resumes and cover letters and learning how to fill out job applications. So again, please let me know if I can help you in the future. If you're interested in any of our youth programs that we have with Texas Farm Bureau, let me know. We do offer scholarships for seniors in high school, and we would love to have you apply. So if you want some more information about that, let me know, and I'll get that to you as well. But I want to say thank you to Texas 4-H for having me today, and it's been great to be here, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Balko. We do appreciate that our schedules worked out and we're able to have your valuable information shared with our 4-H members. Again, Ms. Balko is not, she's not exaggerating. She did share that information with you guys. She's a valuable resource, not only for resumes, but just life skills, questions you guys may have, questions about the opportunities that Texas Farm Bureau provides as well. So be sure and take advantage of the fact that you have her now at your fingertips if you're needing anything.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.